Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the tier list for every role. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It helps out a ton on the channel. Come check out the stream. We've been starting around 11:30 p.m. or midnight Eastern Standard Time. Usually go until about 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Very friendly, chill community. I try to talk as much as I can while I'm playing, explaining the gameplay, just talking about whatever random things people want to talk about, answering questions in the chat, whatever it may be. Very friendly, chill community, so come by and check that out. And then we do tier lists like this for every patch. I do an in-depth support tier list because I am a diamond support main. That's what I know the best. But I also look at other roles in the all-role tier list here. I do patch notes, patch previews a week before they drop. Then I have in-depth champion guides, topical guides like best one trick, how to micro better, how to macro better, all that kind of stuff. We also cover Total War Warhammer on the channel, and lately I've been playing some more single-player games as well. Right now I'm playing Witcher 3. There's a good chance that I might be playing a horror game called Deadwood soon. If you'd like to sponsor one of those playthroughs, just email me, let me know what you have in mind if you want to see me go through another game and just give it the old Strategy Professor spin to it. Then just email me, let me know. Right now it's just game cost plus $5, and I can help you crowdfund that if you're interested. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So I'm going to skip through the support part really quickly just because I do have an entire video for that. I'll have that linked at the very beginning of the video. You just click on the little exclamation mark, and I'll have it linked at the end as well if you want to go through, check out the in-depth support video. The main theme here is you just want to be able to play something that can push really heavy early on and that's going to scale pretty well, particularly stuff that can play around power spikes and ADC, so Ardent Sensor type of supports. We're kind of in Ardent Sensor 2.0. I explain why a ton in that video, so be sure to check all that out. My top picks there are going to be Soraka, Sona, Lulu, Janna, and Rakan. And that's what I talked a lot about in the video. I like Soraka a lot just because she has that global presence with her ult. She can push pretty well with her Q, and she does very well against a lot of the other enchanters because she has the best early game sustain. So when you're sitting there trading, she's landing Qs, they're landing their abilities. Her stuff is just really cost efficient, and she can heal herself and her ally, so she gets the best of a lot of those small time trades. And she's one of the toughest champions for the enemy to deal with later in the game, even if they have grievous wounds. She just puts out an insane amount of healing. Sona is similar, but she has more consistent poke because there's no skill shots aside from her ult, so you can just put out really consistent poke. Good shielding, good healing. Lulu is one of the better single target buff champions, so if you have a mega fed AD carry that auto attacks a lot, Ashe, Caitlyn, Vayne, Twitch, something like that, then Lulu's going to be really strong. Janna's good if they are playing a lot of hard engage, if they have a Nautilus, if they have a Leona, Zac, that type of stuff, then Janna's going to be good. Then Rakan, I think, if you do want to play an engaged champion, Rakan's probably my favorite right now. He did just get a fresh buff off of this last patch, extra movement speed on his R, which is very nice, but he does kind of scale like an enchanter as well. His shield, you can apply it twice. It's 140 each time, so that's a 280 base shield, and then it also has a 0.8 ratio on each shield, so that's a 1.6 ratio. So he, kind of low-key has one of the best shields in the whole game. And then, of course, he has just his suite of abilities and different ways he can interact and different items he can build. So he's probably the most versatile overall champion right now. If you need peel, you need some scaling, you need some engage, he's kind of got you covered on all bases. Now, he can kind of have a little bit of a tough time against some very heavy poke early lane, but I think if you rune for it, then you can deal with it. Now, one that I do want to mention here that's just skyrocketed in popularity and power over the last couple of patches, and I really didn't see this coming, is Lux. Now, Lux, and I didn't mention her. I think I mentioned her briefly in my support tier list video, but I didn't have her tier 1. And she probably deserves to be tier 1. And frankly, this is kind of, it's not unprecedented. Last spring, she was extremely strong before she got nerfed. People were doing an Aftershock Lux build, and that was when her shield used to heal or it used to provide double the shield on the way back. So she was a lot stronger back then. But I think she's rising to popularity again with a similar kind of defensive Lux build just because the other poke champions, most notably Karma, have been nerfed a little bit. Some of the hard engage has been weakened. The Leona, Nautilus just got hit really hard on this patch. All of that stuff, and the rise of Caitlyn. So she works very, very well with Caitlyn. We'll talk about Caitlyn here in a second, who's probably the most overpowered champion overall on this patch. If we just look at the statistics, she plays extremely well with Caitlyn because she pushes really well, she pokes, and then it's pretty much instant death. If you land a bind on somebody and Caitlyn traps them, they're probably dead. So she just play, and she plays very well with Ashe for similar reasons. Once Ashe has arrow, Ashe hits arrow, you hit bind, they're dead. Plays very well with Jhin, similar reasons. You hit your bind, Jhin hits his W, probably dead. Then you have really long range finishers, right? With the Lux ult, the Caitlyn ult, the Jhin ult. Rory, be very careful. If you fall, that's gonna hurt, okay? So yeah, she's kind of risen to prominence there, and then a lot of people are taking Guardian on her now and other poke lanes to trade a little bit better, which is better with range champs. And then Shield Bash is something I haven't really tried, and I was trying to find a video before I shot this, or before I'm recording this right now, to figure out like why this is coming to prominence a little bit more. Someone pointed out last night on stream that you can double apply the shield or the shield. So if you W, Daddy's working. Rory, can you go in there and play with Mommy, please?
No.
Then we can play later.
I want to play in here.
And so if you can basically proc this twice every W, right? So you can get 2 of these auto attacks off, and I don't know the exact numbers on this. It depends on your AP and your plus healing and shielding and all that stuff. But I think this will be about 10 damage, maybe 20 damage each time. Not 20, but like 15 maybe each time Shield Bash goes off. So if you cast this once, like you shield yourself and your ally, you throw it at them, you auto attack, that's 10 damage, and then whenever it bounces back to you again, then you can auto attack again when you have a new shield, and that's going to be another 15 damage on your auto. And then if you land your E, then that will be extra damage on your auto as well. So she just gets a lot of modifiers and just has really good autos and trading, and it's very cheap. So it's only 60 mana at all ranks. Now it does have kind of a long cooldown, so you have to be careful, but I think maybe that's why people go for that, and it's a pretty strong shield early. Is just if you have Guardian up and Prismatic Barrier, you can go in, shield your ally, and it's up to a 200 shield if you hit them. You hit yourself and your ally both times, and you get the double additional shields will neither reset the duration nor strengthen it. So I think that's why maybe Shield Bash is coming online. It could be if there's just nothing better. I do think that if you're going to go Ardent Sensor, font maybe is still decent, but maybe that's a new technology as people are learning how to play around those double procs. People, interestingly enough, are taking Relic Shield most commonly. I would think that the Spell Thieves, because they did buff that to give it an extra 25% mana regen early, would be a bit better, but maybe not. Most people are maxing the W first, and it's because, I think it's because it's the same mana every time. It's always 60 mana. Whereas something like a Janna Shield ends up being over 100 mana, and like a Lulu Shield over 100 mana. Like all these other champs are very expensive. Even a Sona W level 1 is 80 mana. So this makes her extremely cost efficient, so maybe you don't need as much mana early and you can just harass a lot more. So that's kind of a new evolution versus the E max, which does cost a lot. It starts at 70 and goes over 100. So most people are just 1 point in the E, and then they're maxing the W, presumably for those auto attack trades that I mentioned before. That's all I can figure. I couldn't find really good gameplay. I know I need to watch some pro games. I know she's been played in pro a little bit. Her win rate wasn't insane in pro, but it's pretty good. I mean, it's like 58%, fairly low presence. But she is getting picked up more and more in pro. The only games I've seen her in pro are where people are playing her with like a cheese Sona bot lane, like Sona Lux, which can work in solo queue, but that's not indicative of how she's usually going to get played. And then the items that you want on her are enchanter items, okay? So a lot of the high-end people, and when we look at pro builds here, like none of them are building, Death Caps or Luden's Echoes or Tear of the Goddess or anything like that. They're all getting enchanter items, okay? So it's almost always Athene's Unholy Grail, gives you the mana regen, gives you the magic resist early on so you can trade with other enchanters, and because you're going to be dealing a lot of constant damage, you're going to stack it up quite a bit, and then you're going to be able to reapply or like hand over those blood charges with your shield pretty efficiently. So that's what most people do with her. It's the Athene's, and then either Ardent Sense or Redemption depending on the situation, or you can do a Mikhail super early if you're against like an Ashe, or something like that. So that's the build. So you can still get your Ludens or whatever on her if you want to, and just go for the heavy AP build. But that is not why she's strong right now. She's strong because of the Enchanter build with Shield Max. Okay, so I'm gonna have to try this out a bit more, but like I said, her win rate is just like skyrocketed over the last few patches. So if we look at where I had something pulled up here for you, there we go. If you look at this, this is a very recent thing. This is the last 14 days, right? Her win rate has gone from, you know, like, I know that some other content creators have been pushing Lux for several patches now, but I really think that it's something very recent, right? So she's been okay for a while, like 50, 51%. But now it's just like, if you look at this, the blue are like platinum games, she just skyrocketed from like 51.5 all the way up to like 54. Basically in the last week or two. So maybe people just figured out a new build on her. A lot of it correlates with Caitlyn, because if you look at Caitlyn, which we'll look at here in a second, her chart is going to look very similar. So I think it's just a meta shift and why she's gotten a lot stronger. She has received some small buffs here and there, but it's that meta shift that's really boosting her up. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into Caitlyn here. If you look at this indicator here, the pick ban influence is how often is somebody picked. I'll hover this. You can look at the pause and look at the formula if you want. But it basically looks at how often is something picked, how often is something banned, and then what is its win rate. The higher all of those numbers are, the more impactful that people are thinking that a champion is. Because if people are picking it, a lot of times it's because it's good. It could be because it's fun, but a lot of times it's because it's meta. If it has a high win rate and a lot of people are picking it, that means that you are having a bunch of auto-filled people or people that aren't that practiced on it playing it. Because the stuff with a really low pick rate means that it's specialist, right? It's like one-trick type of people like Quinn or something like that. So like Quinn has a 53% win rate, for example, in top lane, but only 2% people pick her. So that means she's either only picked as a counter pick very often, so she's not getting picked into bad matchups, or it's people that specialize in her a lot. When you have something that has a really high pick rate and a high win rate, that means you have the auto-filled people that are like blind picking her into any matchup and still winning a lot. That's a sign that something's really OP. And then the cherry on top is if you have a high ban rate, that means that a lot of other people are respecting that pick in most elos. It could just be because it's annoying, not necessarily OP. So something like Yasuo, people don't like playing against it, but he doesn't have a high win rate. But if they have all three of those, high pick rate, high ban rate, and high win rate, that's a sure sign that something is really strong. So that's why I like this new PBI indicator, pick ban influence, that Lolalytics has started using. So, you know, Shen is the highest in top lane with a 20. You know, he's got a 52% win rate, 9% pick rate, 4% ban rate. It's pretty good. Looking in the jungle, oh, Hecarim's got 26. That's pretty good. You know, looking at mid lane, oh, Zed's got a 37. That's pretty strong, right? Look at support. Okay. Lux came out of nowhere. She's got a 35 right now. Almost a 54.5% win rate at Platinum Plus. Amazing. And then we click on bot lane. Caitlyn has a 146 pick ban influence right now. 146. Completely off the charts nuts. Right? So she's got a 53% win rate with a 31% pick rate and a 40% ban rate. 39% ban rate. It's just like unbelievable numbers. Like, look at how much she's played. She's 147,000 games so far on this patch, compared to like Ashe, you know, who's at 91,000. Right? Like, it's just not even remotely close. That champion is so obviously ridiculously OP. And that really, I mean, look at these charts. Look at these charts. Especially if we just look in the last 14 days, it's up a little bit. But yeah, it's just absolutely nuts over the last month or so, just how much she's skyrocketed to prominence. Now, she did get a specific buff. I think that was the last patch. That was on July 19th or so, and then her win rate shot up like 5%. Now, I personally did not think that her win rate, like that buff was going to be that much, but apparently it is. So, and you know, she's historically been pretty difficult for people to play. They don't use the headshot mechanic correctly. They don't set down their traps. But when she gets this strong, it just doesn't even matter if you're using your traps most of the time, because she still has huge range. She has excellent wave clear, and if you just Q the wave and just poke them under tower, you can just completely destroy him. So what? I think the buff was like a 5% move speed or something. It really didn't seem like it was much. Base attack damage was up by 2, and base movement speed was up by 5. That's it. 4% win rate increase. Now, it could be that she was kind of strong beforehand, and part of that is the ecosystem, right? You have to think Aphelios has been nerfed a ton, Senna's been nerfed, a lot of these other, Ezreal got nerfed, a lot of these other, Ashe got nerfed, a lot of these other high dominance ADCs did get nerfed, and then she got some minor buffs, and that really brought her into the fold. And that's just how the meta is working as well, with the enchanters being stronger, kind of these early game push champions, the Karma, now Lux, Sona, Soraka, and then the weakening of those hard engaged supports, right? So the Nautilus, the Leona, she wasn't terrible into them because she does have her traps to help her out. She has her net, so it's not like she's horrible into hard engage, but obviously she's going to be a lot better if they don't have the hard engage. So Caitlyn is just really strong, and sort of the her ability to go Infinity Edge into Stormrazor is really strong, because one of the main problems with Caitlyn historically is she just doesn't scale that well with attack speed because her base attack speed's so slow. So getting double Zeal just felt really bad in the past. But now you have another item with Stormrazor that gives you attack damage and critical chance. The Stormrazor's obviously been around for a while. But the meta just hasn't really suited Caitlyn for a little bit. But the Infinity Edge plus Stormrazor plus Rapid Fire Cannon just gives her a really smooth progression curve that can actually be quite strong. And she can still build Essence Reaver as well, which is another heavy attack damage item with Critical Strike. So she only has to get one Zeal item with Rapid Fire. She doesn't have to get Phantom Dancer. She doesn't have to get Static Shiv anymore. And she just has really huge range, pokes well, has excellent wave clear. It's really hard to dive her. She's very annoying. She's just the queen of pushing and taking towers. Like, when she starts putting you into the tower and starts putting those traps down, especially if she's on red side pushing you, you know, into that tower where that little blind spot is on blue side where she can put those traps in there, or, you know, trap the little corner so you can't walk around, like, between the wall and the tower. It just limits your movement so much, and it's just so obnoxious to deal with, especially when you're also getting poked by Lux, you're getting poked by Soraka, Sona, all of this stuff. It's just really, really overwhelming, and she just stifles a lot of other picks out there. Anyone that's not Ashe or Jhin is just going to get absolutely annihilated by her. Any of these short-range champs, your Vaynes, your Lucians, all of that, there's no chance, especially in higher elo brackets. So she just really needs to be banned every patch we can. So super, super strong right now. Even if people don't have the best mechanics, you know, in theory, when they step on a trap, you should headshot net backwards while the net is buffering. You should Q to throw your Q through, net hits them, and you get another headshot. So every time they step on a trap, you should be getting a double headshot plus a Q. Almost nobody does that under Diamond. Even a lot of Diamond Caitlyn's don't do that. So if you're really good on her, then she's like mega OP right now, like pros. But even average Caitlyn's that are just gonna, someone steps on a trap and it's just gonna be a Q and a one headshot, even just a headshot sometimes, is enough to push you out of lane. So the only way you can really deal with that is to hard engage on her, but it's so hard to do that right now because you have to get through her traps, and you're just not going to have enough damage to get through, because like Draven just really isn't in the meta right now. Like Miss Fortune's been nerfed. Jhin is really one of your only options. If you have like Jhin Leona or something, you can manage to get on her, then she can do all right. But with a lot of these enchanters taking Guardian and having various heals and shields and peels and all that kind of stuff, it's just super hard to get on her. So I think she's very oppressive right now. Ashe is the next one that I want to mention. Ashe is very strong still. I think she still has the second highest PBR. Just there we go. Let me pull that up there. There we go. So it's still pretty good, or PBI rather. It's not as good as Caitlyn, but you know, as it drops off pretty significantly after that, it's basically Ashe Caitlyn meta. And Ashe has been strong for several patches, and it's very similar to Caitlyn. She'll poke, push you under towers. She's got her W to constantly harass you, has very long range. That slow is very obnoxious. It's really hard to get on her. Unless you have a hook, she can kite you. And then obviously once she has her ult, then it's really good engage that combos so well with other champions that are in the meta right now. You know, she hits that arrow, Lux does all of her stuff to you, or even like Leona or Nautilus does all their stuff to you. And it's really nice to have engage from the AD position, because that means that your other lanes don't necessarily have to engage. You can play some of these more aggressive junglers and aggressive top laners and aggressive mid laners if you have Ashe, right? Because if you want to play something like Darius top lane and then jungle Kha'Zix and mid lane Fizz or something like that, it's like, well, that might work, but you have no way to actually start a fight later on. You just have to lock out vision and hope that you can pick them off in rotations, which works, but it's even better if you have an Ashe so that you can actually comfortably get picks on somebody, start fights and things like that. Because a lot of the hard engaged top laners aren't popular right now. You know, Ornn's been nerfed a lot, so you're not seeing a lot of Ornn. You're seeing some Maokai, but people really want to play these fighters. Set's been nerfed several times. People really want to play these fighters top lane now that aren't going to have the engage. And then a lot of the junglers, similarly, with engage are kind of falling off a little bit. You're seeing some of them, like Nunu and Hecarim are rising to prominence, and they still have engage. But stuff like the Kha'Zix and Kayn and stuff like that have a hard time engaging. And the same thing with top lane. You've got like Darius, Shen, stuff like that. Wukong's been nerfed several times, so he's still good, but just having that reliable engage is nice with the poke, with pretty respectable scaling. Ashe is very good, especially with that inspiration. The changes to inspiration were one of the huge things that brought her into the meta, and the nerfs to Aphelios and Set and all that stuff, or Senna and all that stuff. So she's still going to be a powerhouse, even though her late game did get nerfed. The scaling off of her Q maxed out, I think lost like 20 attack speed. But you still max your W, and your Q's not going to get maxed till level 13 anyways, and most games are going to be over by then. So Ashe is still going to be super strong right now. And then Jhin is the next one that is still going to be pretty good. And the reason is he does have that poke early. He does have sort of the ability to blow people up. He's very good against assassins, people that can dive, that can get on you, because he can do enough burst damage to threaten them. In the early game, you're not going to see him as much in high reload, just because with his reload mechanic, he can be abused quite a lot. You know, whenever he's going to reload, people know they can engage. You're not going to be able to shoot him back. They can trade with you, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, the grenade does push very well. The W is an excellent combo with things like Lux and any other sort of engage that's going on in your team. You do have the long-range finisher with your ult. And he just comes online and does a ton of damage early. It's kind of like Caitlyn Light. If Caitlyn's banned, Jhin could be a good pick. So just like Infinity Edge, and then you can either go Rapid Fire or Storm Razor, but that's kind of the trinity of really strong items on some of these crit users right now. And then it looks like a lot of people are going back to Dark Harvest. You can still do Fleet as well. So comes online, does good burst damage. Excellent if they don't have a lot of tanks. If they do have assassins and things like that, and you need that really fast upfront burst, then Jhin, then Jhin can be very strong for that. And he does get really good movement speed off of the crit plus swiftness. He can reposition really well to help you kite down some of these fighters or bruisers that are trying to run you down. So I think that he is pretty good. I think he's decidedly a step down from Caitlyn and Ashe, but he's still going to be really strong right now. And then you kind of have the rest, and Ezreal, especially in Pro, is still going to be really good. So yeah, Ashe and Caitlyn are pretty much, yeah. Ashe is 60% with 60% win rate with 64% presence in Pro. Caitlyn's 61% presence with 63% win rate, and then everyone else is garbage. Basically, Ezreal's 43% with a high presence, and then you've got Kallista's at 50% win rate, and pretty much everyone else is negative. So yeah, I mean, it's extremely lopsided in the ADC role right now. So hopefully they will nerf Caitlyn and Ashe a little bit more on the next patch. We'll see. They did buff Tristan on this patch, but it doesn't matter. Her win rate hasn't gone anywhere. I thought she'd be a little bit better, but her early game is just too bad against these top 3 champs. Ezreal still can be really good, though. Like, if you do like Ezreal, you do want to play something that's a little bit safer, you can hang on and be sort of a menace later on. Still the same build. I think Iceborne Gauntlet is probably where you want to be. Some Ezreal's Argo and Trinity. But I think if you're playing Ezreal, one of the main attractions is that you can have that defense against AD assassins like the Kayn, Kha'Zix, Zed, Talon, stuff like that. So I like Iceborne. It also gives you a little bit more wave clear which he desperately needs. So he's okay. He just takes a long time to come online. He does have poke, and you're just going to get blasted by Caitlyn and Ashe early on. But if you can survive, then you can be really good once you get to your 2 items. Just be prepared. You're going to go down against a good Caitlyn or a good Ashe or even a good Jhin. You're probably going to go down 30 CS in the laning phase. You can come back. And then Jinx is another one. I just kind of strapped to think for a 5th one here. But I think that Jinx can be okay in the right circumstances. She does scale better than any of the other ones. So if you do make it through the laning phase, you do get to 3 items, she's probably going to be stronger in 5v5 team fights than someone like a Caitlyn is. Caitlyn doesn't have any AoE abilities in team fights, whereas Jinx, with her rockets and her ultimate and stuff like that, she does a lot more team fighting damage, especially if she gets a kill and her passive Get Excited gets triggered. So she can be really good later on, and she can kind of keep up early. I mean, she's got the rockets to help her wave clear a little bit. And then she has Chompers and Zap, so, if your Lux lands a bind, your Nautilus engages, your Leona engages, whatever the case may be, you drop those Chompers on, you chomp them, you zap them, and you can finish them off with your ult. So she does have some pretty respectable early game all-in burst in the right circumstances, so she's okay. She is very vulnerable to ganks, she is very vulnerable to all-ins, but she can still do alright in some circumstances. So if you'll notice a trend here, you'll notice something that is very contrary to what a lot of people are doing lately, and the win rates fly in the face of it. Can you guess what it is? Something I talk about a lot on stream. That's right. Manamune is garbage, okay? Trash. Do not get that freaking item. I'm so tired of seeing that in every game. People going, oh, I'm gonna go Manamune Draven. Oh, I'm gonna go Manamune... all this other stuff. It's terrible. Don't do it. These champions murder Manamune, okay? Caitlyn, Ashe, Jhin, they all destroy people who get Manamune. Okay, Ezreal's the only person who gets it because he really, really needs the mana, and that makes sense. But I've seen so many people in the last week or so. Oh, my camera's freaking out. Let me fix the camera real quick. Hopefully it hasn't been doing that for too long. Sorry about that. I don't know. It's just weird sometimes. But I've seen so many people getting Manamune. Manamune Twitch, Manamune Draven, all this other stuff. It takes too long to come online. Yes, what people look at is they look at just the raw numbers and stats. They look at the ideal situation, right? It's like, okay, it comes online at 2,400 gold, so that's cheaper than other items, and when you get it fully stacked, then you get, all of this extra AD. It's like 60, 70 AD, whatever it is, and you get this cool on-hit damage, and it's awesome. And that's great. If they leave you alone and just let you farm for 20 minutes, sure, Manamune is good. Very cost efficient. Caitlyn's not going to let you sit there and farm. Ashe is not going to let you sit there and farm. You are going to get blasted. You're going to be down, 30, 40 CS in the laning phase trying that garbage out, okay? So there is some synergy, particularly with Twitch, with Manamune. If you go Manamune and Hurricane, yes, each one of the bolts of the Hurricane, once you get Muramana completed, will trigger the on-hit damage. That's good. Your ultimate, each person that you hit with your ultimate will trigger the on-hit damage from Manamune, or from Muramana. Once it's transformed, yes, it's really good. No question. Okay, so it's great on 2 or 3 items, but these champs are just not going to let you go there. Okay, it's a very early game, aggressive meta, and when you get Tear of the Goddess, it's 850 gold that is basically completely wasted on those champions, and you just can't afford to give them that kind of advantage in the early game. Now, those champs, especially Twitch, are very vulnerable right now anyways, because he's already pretty bad in the early game. But I really think you need that Vamp Scepter and then build into Bork, Blade the Ruined King, so that you at least have a chance to get some kills, go invisible, and pick people off and have a lot of power immediately when you complete Bork. Yes, it is 800 gold more, but it's way, way stronger. Once it's completed, you don't have to wait that 10 or 15 minutes for it to stack up to Manamune. Twitch doesn't even stack Manamune that fast. So I think that has been a major contributor to why some of these champs are underperforming, is that people are trying all of these stupid Manamune builds. And yes, in some situations, under ideal circumstances, yes, they can be good. But those circumstances are not now in a heavy push-poke mana. So please, unless it's Ezreal, do not do Manamune. Just play these, high poke crit champions, and you're going to be way better off. Okay. exit my soapbox. So once again, I understand theoretically the power behind it. I get it. I know. But the problem is in the real world where you're constantly getting auto attacked by Caitlyn and Ashe, you just can't give up that 850 gold worthlessness during the laning phase, right? Which is tier. And even when you complete Manamune before it transforms, it's just not going to be that strong. I think it's like maybe 50 AD, no crit, no attack speed. It might be 55 AD. Either way, it's going to get blasted by an Infinity Edge most of the time. So, anyways, I just don't think it's the meta. There are certain metas for it. Yes, it's still pretty good on Kai'Sa. Yes, obviously on Ezreal, but as you can see, those champions are just getting worked right now. Right, Kai'Sa's at 47%, Ezreal's at 48%, and those are the best Manamune users, I think, in ADC. Twitch has fallen a lot, 3 or 4%, probably because everybody's getting all that garbage. So anyways, I'll hop off my soapbox. Let's go over to mid. But yes, you want critical strike, early game, high aggression champions in ADC right now. Okay, Katarina. Now, mid is probably the most balanced lane, and it usually is. There's a lot of stuff that's viable in mid if you're really good on, you know, any of like the top 30 champions you could think of. They can all be very good. And you can kind of see that in the PBI. There aren't that many people that are over the line. Zed is pretty strong right now. But a lot of that is because he just has a really high ban rate. People just hate going against this champion. Like, his win rate at 52 is, like, okay. The pick rate at 12 is reasonable. But there's a large diversity of champs, right, that are available. You've got Zed as a 12% pick rate. Yasuo is a 12% pick rate. And that's it. Everything else is under 10, which means that there's a lot of stuff that people like to play that they can win on that's viable. So mid is just the best role in terms of, you know, viability in different roles. So, you know, this is just my list, but it could very easily go a totally different way depending on what you're comfortable with, what you can win with. So with ADC, I think you definitely need to play these top 3. But with mid, I think a lot of stuff is pretty open depending on what you're good at. So I would put Katarina up there as number 1. One thing that I would say about mid that is probably a good idea is to get something with AP. The main reason I say that is that a lot of top lane champions that are really strong right now are going to be AD champions. And junglers, a lot of the top junglers that are being picked are AD junglers. So if you play an AD mid and then either your top or your jungler also plays AD, you're running a high risk of making yourself really vulnerable to armor stacking. So that's why I have things like Zed a little bit lower, even though he's high up here, and stuff like Talon, who can be really good, just because I think the AD can make you vulnerable, team comp-wise. So that's why I like AP champions in the mid, just for balanced team comp. Especially if you're an early pick and you don't know what your allies are going to play. It just really helps open up the possibilities for your teammates if you play AP. So why Katarina? Well, there are a couple different builds that are good on her, and she snowballs super hard if you're proficient on her. She's extremely high skill cap, so you need to be very good on her. You need to practice her a lot. But she can go for this Gunblade build, which is obviously what she's going to do. But then I think there's also a Death's Dance build. Yeah, right here. Second item, Death's Dance, which has a really high win rate. Not as many people are getting it, but this is super strong because most of her abilities have an AD ratio. They do AP damage, but they also have an AD ratio, including her passive. So she gets a lot of value out of Death's Dance because you get healing off your Gunblade and you get healing off Death's Dance, and usually she's going to take Conquer, I believe, or maybe Electrocute, but either way, a lot of healing. And why is healing good? Because the more that you stay up and fight, the less you die, then the more resets you're going to get and the more damage you're going to be able to put out. So she's all about putting out a ton of damage, but what makes her different from some of the other assassins is those resets. Is that once she starts getting the kills rolling in, she gets the resets, she potentially gets some Triumph procs, stuff like that, gets her ult reset. She can just do a ton of damage and does a lot of sustained damage. So you just want to make sure that you don't get blown up. Now, Hourglass is still going to be pretty solid as well. There's a few different items you can build on her. But I just like her because I think she's the most brutal in 5v5 team fights, or one of them, because she can kill multiple targets with those resets. And I think right now a lot of it is team fighting because people are fighting over scuttles, dragons, rift heralds. Now she doesn't have great wave clear, so that is, you know, one knock against her, and that is the thing with a lot of these assassins up here, is if you let Caitlyn through, the enemy gets Caitlyn, and they smash your bot lane and come walk into mid lane at 10 minutes, you're going to be in big trouble because you don't have any wave clear. So that is kind of dicey. And you do have to be careful against a lot of CC. But as I was talking about, in the other two sections of the video here, you're not seeing as much Nautilus. You're not seeing as much Leona. Of course, they're still going to be somewhat popular, but people are realizing that enchanters overall are going to give you the best chance to win right now. And so you're seeing a lot of the top picks here are going to be the Lulu, are going to be things like Morgana, Senna, Karma, Yumi. All of these don't do so hot into Katarina because they don't have a good point-click stun that can shut her up, right? Morgana's probably going to be the closest thing to being annoying, but you should be able to flash or dodge around her Q. I'm not even sure that the Q stops your spells because it's a bind. It depends on the bind. But either way, these guys are not going to have a good time against Cat. Thresh can do all right if Thresh is really on point. It's very, very conditional, though. So you're not seeing the Nautilus. You're not seeing the Leona. Those are the things you'd be really scared of if you're playing Katarina. You're not seeing Rakan as much. Rakan's great into Katarina. So that just really opens up the door. These champs are also really squishy. So not only can they not stop you with CC as easily as some champions in the previous meta, but they also can die. So that's another person you can kill. And you're seeing some more, kind of fighter champions out of the jungle, less tanky champs out of the jungle with the exception of Nunu. And you're seeing these kind of fighter tops that are very heavily reliant on sustain and healing a lot of times. So if you look at like Darius, Singed, Maokai, Fiora, a lot of these champs really need to heal. And Fiora's ultimate applies a 60% healing debuff, which is also very good against Soraka, Redemption, Janna, a lot of these other champs that are also trying to heal. So the fact that she has built-in grievous wounds, you don't have to buy Morellonomicon. She has a versatile build path that can include a defensive item like Death's Dance and still do a ton of damage with that and have a lot of sustain herself. I just think she's very, very well positioned in the meta if you can play her well, right? That's a big if because she is hard to play. And I think that she is pretty strong right now. Fizz is another one that I think is going to be a powerhouse. And the main thing about Fizz is just the way that he trades makes it extremely difficult to peel him and CC and sort of deal with him, right? Because like what'll happen usually is he'll throw a fish from out of the fog of war. If he hits somebody, it's really hard to exhaust before he comes in and does all the damage because he's going to jump up on his little pole, and then as soon as the fish goes off, he lands on you and then just like rolls his hand across the keyboard and you're dead before the exhaust works. So, he can basically start that combo from pretty far away, and he can usually get away with his Seastone Trident after he kills you as well, or with his Playful Trickster after he kills you as well. So he just does a ton of damage, and just his trading pattern, his outplay potential with his Playful Trickster makes him so difficult to deal with. And I think if you're good on him, he has good matchups into other assassins too, right? If Zed tries to ult him, I believe he can Seastone Trident to dodge it. He can jump around like a Janna Tornado. He can evade Exhaust for a lot of the time. There's just a lot of stuff. He can jump Ash Arrows. There's a lot of outplay potential that he has with the Seastone Trident. So he's not only super mobile, but super obnoxious to deal with. Like he can jump and avoid a Karthus ult with it. So there's just a lot of mechanics. He can dodge a tower shot with it, right? So if he hits you with a fish, he can just go in with his Urchin Strike and then Seastone Trident, Trident, hit you a couple of times, kill you, and then Playful Trickster out and dodge a tower shot. So he's just really, really obnoxious to deal with when he gets fed. He has a pretty good matchup into other assassins. He can dodge a lot of CC and skill shots and things like that and just puts out a ton of damage. He can obviously jump over walls and things like that. Has very good rotation capability. So I think Fizz is still going to be super strong, and that's also reflected in his win rate. Fizz is almost always like a 52 or 53% win rate, but just a lot of people just sleep on him. I guess he's dropped a little bit to like 51. But I think he can still be pretty good. There's the potential, too. You could hit multiple people in a team fight with the fish. That's rare. Most people spread out, but you could hit a couple of people and do a lot of damage. Echo's another one who's really high skill cap. And Echo, I mean, you could make an argument for Echo being the strongest right now as well because he can still flex into the jungle a little bit. And he can flex in the top lane, although most of the time these days he's going to be played as mid laner. he just has a lot going on. He's super fast. He's very good against other assassins as well because he can use his ultimate to dodge things, and he can use the ultimate to reset his health bar. So he has a lot of potential there. And yeah, just does a ton of damage. Really cheap items. All of these guys have cheap items. Like Katarinas are a little bit more expensive, but Fizz can go for the Protobelt Zanyas, Echo Protobelt Zanyas. And Protobelt's 2,500, Zanya's is 26 or 2,650. So just very cheap, efficient items. Echo's actually quite good at team fighting if he lands that stun on multiple targets. And he has really high sustained damage as well, just with his auto attacks and his E, his ability to reposition. His Q can hit multiple targets. So he's one of the better, just flat out team fighter champs with a lot of outplay potential. Katarina is very good at team fighting too, but she doesn't have any CC. Echo has that, potential multi-target stun, which can be pretty massive. So Echo is going to be really strong as well. Zed's another one, up near the tops. Very good. He did get a couple of big buffs. I think they lowered the cooldown on his W, which is his mobility early on, and they made it a lot faster so that you can move and start throwing your stuff a lot faster. So really high skill cap. A lot of these champions up here are really high skill cap, but does a lot of damage. There are quite a few champs that are getting Hourglass. Like all three of these are likely to have Hourglass in the early game, so they do have some outplay potential on your ult. But if you bait out the Hourglass or play around it in some way, it can still work, but that is something that can be a little bit difficult for him to deal with early on. Also, he does have the problem of being an AD champion, so you have a big team comp risk there where you could have too much AD on your team if you run an 80-person middle. You could substitute Talon for Zed. Talon is much easier to play than Zed is, and he also does a ton of damage, also has a similar win rate. I just have Zed on there just because of his ability to get to that back line. I don't know. Talon can too, jumping over walls. They're very, very similar. Talon does roam a little bit better. Zed has a bit more outplay potential, I think, but both of those can be really strong. And then Galio's the other one who is kind of coming to prominence over the last few patches, becoming more and more popular, 53%. He's kind of your go-to tank/utility mid laner if you don't really want to run an assassin. You want to double down on the team fight capabilities. He's very good with a lot of what's going on in the meta right now. Obviously, he's going to play very well with enchanters who can heal him up, shield him. Plays very well with Shen, who's super strong, which we'll talk about in a little bit with the top lane. But just having that semi-global presence, being able to jump in, rotate the team fights, is going to be quite strong. And I think a lot of people are building him, maxing Q and building AP on him. Yeah, so just Hex Tech and then Leandri's gives you some HP, a little bit of tankiness, and then a pretty good chunk of damage. Protobelt is just super strong on so many champs. It's so cheap. It's 2,500 gold. Gives a ton of damage. Gives you some really good wave clear. It's only a 40-second cooldown, so you can use it to clear waves if you need to. It's just an all-around really, really strong item. And it looks like people are building him Aftershock. So if you need sort of a hybrid tanky mage type of champ, then I think he is very good. I think he does have a good matchup into assassins. He can also go for the Zanyas. So Galio's definitely someone to consider again in mid lane. Someone asked me about support Galio. I still don't like support Galio. I think he's going to get run over by the push poke in the bot lane, but overall he can be pretty strong. Okay, in the jungle, I still think Nunu is going to be the best overall jungler right now. I play him all the time. If you come by the stream, you can see me play some Nunu games. His pick ban influence is not the highest, but it's mostly just because people don't like picking him and he's not banned that often. His win rate's quite high at 53%. The thing about Nunu is he's just so versatile. He has a very safe clear, so it's very hard for someone to come in and invade you and bust you up in your own jungle because you're almost always going to be close to full health. You can go and invade their jungle if you want. You do take buffs really well. You can win all of the scuttle fights, all dragon fights, Rift, Baron, all that stuff. If you just time your Q with your smite correctly, it's almost impossible to steal from him. I've messed it up a couple of times on stream, but if you just practice it in the practice tool, the timing on the Q plus the smite, as long as you're not CC'd, remember that if you are CC'd, stunned, you can't use your Q, but you can use your smite, so that can actually throw you off. If they stun you when, Baron's at 1,700 health and you're trying to Q plus smite, they stun you and only your smite goes off and your Q doesn't because you're stunned, then it's going to be an early smite and they're going to steal it from you. So you do have to be a little careful. Also, don't stand behind Baron because those little spikes that come up can give you a little mini stun and knock you out of your Q animation. That's happened to me before. That sucked. So make sure you're always in front of Baron. But yeah, so just really good objective control. And then also what sets him apart from some of these other, I guess, sort of role player or like tanky junglers is that he's very, very good in the early game ganks. He's one of the best early game ganking champions in the game, surprisingly, because of that snowball and its interaction with Scuttle. So whenever you get that Scuttle buff and you roll in on that snowball, that speed that you get at the start stays for the entire snowball. That speed boost off of the shrine, the Scuttle shrine, when you kill it. You get it for the entire speed boost. And you can't be slowed, so they can't cast any slows on you either. So it's extremely powerful for ganks. It's almost impossible to dodge that snowball. Half the time when they flash, you're going to be able to arc it around and hit them anyways. And if you hit them with that snowball, it's very big damage in the early game. And then you have a follow-up, basically 3-second slow with your little mini snowballs with your E. And then you get a root after that for 1 second. So basically you're going to have like 4 to 5 seconds of CC, and you're going to be able to take off 50 to 60% of their health by yourself. And if you have Chilling Smite, that's another, couple of seconds of CC. So he's just a CC machine that has a ton of gank potential, does quite a bit of early game damage. And then he scales pretty well. He's like very versatile. You can go for kind of a traditional tank build with your Spirit Visage, your Dead Man's Plate if you want to. If you're really far ahead, you can go Leandries. People don't go that often, but that can work. All of your abilities apply some kind of slow, or the vast majority of them do, except for your Q. So you're going to get that double damage off of the Leandries. You scale off of both HP and AP now. They increase his AP ratios a ton, so you get double scaling off of those items. So that's a really good big ticket item, especially if they have a lot of tanks or the fights are going to be going on for a long time. You can also do Proto Belt. It's fairly common on him. I don't get that often, but it's very strong. It's got the HP, it's got the AP, that's the double scaling, and then you have the extra damage off your Proto Belt activation, which can help you out with an all-in combo. But then it can also give you like pretty good wave clear as well if you need to like just clear a camp really quick and go gank, or if you have like Rift Herald and you just ganked and you're just trying to clear the wave so that you can go in and start slamming those towers, you can do that. Good job, Rory. So he's very strong. And then you also have some more utility picks, which not a lot of people do. I see some people doing it, but it can be really strong. Just getting something like a Knight's Vow is very common, like a third item that I'll get. It's very cheap, 2,200 gold. Gives you some extra sustain, some extra tankiness, allows you to help out your allies. Another one, I really don't do this that much, but you could go Ardent Sensor in theory if you do have Font of Life. If you're applying that slow, they get the Font debuff on them. Whenever your ally heals, so like when your Vayne auto attacks somebody that you've slowed, it counts as a heal coming from you, and then it'll give them the Ardent Sensor buff. So obviously you would only do that if you have a really fed 80 carry and you have a support who doesn't have Ardent. So you have someone like a Leona as your support. You have a Vayne who's like 7-0. You're confident that you're not going to get blown up as Nunu. You're really far ahead, and you just want to go Ardent Sensor. It can work. He does have good AP ratios. The movement speed's awesome on him. The plus healing and shielding is actually pretty good because you have a shield on your ult. You have healing with your Q. So he likes all those stats. Even the extra attack speed's not bad. So that's another thing. His passive does give out extra attack speed to the person with the highest attack speed around you anyways. Just FYI. So that's another buff that you give your team. And it gives them movement speed. So ADCs really love having Nunu. So yeah, he's just really versatile. You could also build something like a Locket if you want to as well, if they have a lot of like AP damage. So very versatile build. You can get Thorn Mail as well. Oops. Okay. I don't even need the headphones on. Sometimes I just put them on just because. Here you go.
I want a big phone.
Okay, there you go. So anyways, I like Nunu a lot. Very versatile, very aggressive early game jungler, great scaling, great objective control. He's just everything. I think Nunu is just really, really strong. No, I can't, Rory. Daddy's working right now, okay? Look.
With your hand?
Hold on. Look. Oh, you want to go in there? All right. Don't step on the big Poe. Okay. Alright. Sorry about that. She wants to go into this little laundry hamper. She calls it her volcano. She sits in there with an iPad that she calls her Big Poe. You want me to close it, Rory? Oh, you got it? Okay, go ahead. I, you can't close it? Okay. Anyway, sorry about the little intermission there, but anyway, she's gonna be really strong right now. Now, Hecarim is someone else who is really rising to prominence on this patch. They gave him a buff for like extra damage at the max range of your E, and he's actually really strong right now. Close the door or open the door? Oh, you want me to close? Oh, you want to close the volcano door? So Hecarim did get a lot more damage on his E. Okay, he does. Okay, there you go. He does have really good ganks early on, kind of like Nunu. I think Nunus are honestly a little bit better. Nunu's also AP, which is really good for the reasons I talked about before. If you have an AD top, and especially if you have like a Zed or a Talon or something bottom, you can be an AP threat in the jungle. What is it? So, anyways, he has pretty good wave clear with his Q, pretty good damage. Oh, I need my headphones on? Rory wants me to put my headphones on. There you go. Thank you, Rory. So, good ganks early. His power spike is a little weird because he does go Cinder Hulk, which is fine. It gives him extra wave clear, all that stuff. But then he goes Trinity after that. So you don't get a lot of value out of it because you're not getting any resistances on Trinity. You are getting a little bit of extra... you are getting a little bit of extra HP, which is okay. It's a really weird power spike that people do with him. I'm not sure, like, his AD ratios just aren't that great. So it seems like he should be going Warrior Trinity for the early game power spike, but a lot of times he goes Cinder Hulk just because his AD ratios aren't that good. So it's a little funky. Oh, that's cool, Rory. Good job. But then Death's Dance is something that people are running more and more on him, which can be good. Spirit Visage is also great, especially if you have a healer support like a Soraka, a Sona, something like that. Spirit Visage can be good. So he's very, very strong. Once he gets Trinity Force, he can completely take over the game and just run people over. But I feel like his early game is a little bit suspect. Like, you're good on ganks, but you can't duel that fast. Your clear is like pretty good. Single target, not insane, but your multi-target's very good. So he's okay. But he does have a really high win rate right now. I mean, it's hard to argue with that, so I just went ahead and put him up there. And he does have a great engage later on in the game for those team fights. I think that's one of the huge things is when he's 6 and people are fighting over Dragon or the second Rift or whatever, you know, he does have a really killer access to that back line to tear up that Caitlyn or whatever because he's unstoppable and he just gets that fear on the back line. So very good flanking, very good ultimate CC. So he does bring that to the table, which is really nice. Like, Nunu can get over there, but Caitlyn putting up a bunch of traps or, like, Janna tornadoing you or whatever. Yeah, that is cool, isn't it? You know, you can be peeled as Nunu. You can't really peel Hecarim that well. It's very, very difficult to peel Hecarim, especially when he's super fed. So that's probably why he's here, because it's, like, good gank potential, pretty good clear, and then just really, really good team fight capability, really good engage, kill Caitlyn, kill Ashe, and that's kind of what this meta is right now. Okay, Kane's another one that, and we'll move through this a little bit faster here. Kane's still very strong, super fast clear, early gank's a little bit suspect. If you do have strong lanes, he can get those cleanups. If you get transformed really early, he can be strong. Red Kayn is typically where you want to be. Very good sustain, good knockup, AoE knockup, pretty presentable in team fights. He can get to that back line a lot of times with his ultimate. Blue Kayn's even okay if they don't have a lot of tanks on their team. I think Blue Kayn can be pretty good. Does a ton of damage. He can just rotate around the map, play the yellow Q game really well. Super fast, very low cooldown on his W. Very good wave clear, both not only in the jungle but in side lanes. If you need to go clean up a side lane really quick as Blue Kayn and then rotate back over, get back to your team to make some kind of play. He's just kind of everywhere when he's in blue form. So I still think red form's better, but blue form's definitely something that's okay if the enemy team doesn't have a lot of tanks. So pretty versatile, pretty strong overall, great snowball champ. Kha'Zix was really OP last patch. It looks like he's fallen down like 2 or 3% with that nerf, but still very strong, great single target objective control, just melts dragons, blue buff, red buff, Baron. And if he does get ahead, the invisibility is very strong. W, highly underrated. When he gets that updated, or the upgraded W, it's a 90% slow for like 2 seconds. It's pretty ridiculous. But he does have a lot of snowball potential, very similar to Katarina. He's got a lot of juice in the tank. If he starts getting those resets, he can do a ton of damage. So I think Kha'Zix is definitely probably the best jungle assassin. Rengar, if you're really good on Rengar can still be really good too. So it just kind of pick your poison there. But both of those are both quite strong. And then Fiddlesticks is another one that I think is coming up a little bit. And I kind of like him right now just because having that CC for the assassin who's going to be played middle most of the time, and being able to CC some of these like enchanters or ADCs. There's just not as many tanks running around in several of the roles, and so that means that you can blow them up with your ult pretty comfortably. Very good wave clear. Some people are playing these more like farm heavy early game junglers that aren't going to invade and punish you as much. So like the Nunu, the Hecarim, and the Kayn are a lot less likely to invade you than like Lee Sin, Nidalee, stuff like that. You want out. And he's very good at team fights. You know, when we're having these 5v5 team fights for the dragons, the rifts, all that stuff. When you're trying to accelerate, when you have, you know, Caitlyn on your team or Ashe, and you're trying to accelerate and close out the game quickly, and you just want a huge power spike when everybody's level 6, well, he's very good at that. So I think that Fiddlesticks is rising to prominence a little bit more just because he can come online really hard at 6, and he's not going to get punished as much early on by some of these invade junglers, at least in theory. Now, people can still play Lee Sin and come sit in your jungle if they want to, but it seems like it's a little bit less likely to happen now than it was maybe a month or two ago. Okay, and then the top lane champs real quick. Not a ton has changed here. Darius, still going to be a powerhouse. His win rate's not as strong as it has been in the past at 51%. But he's still an absolute monster. He's so difficult to deal with. If he gets ahead, he just snowballs so hard. He beats up all the other tanks. He's pretty good against squishies as well. So Darius is a big problem. Shin is probably the real MVP of this last patch, and he'll probably continue to be strong this patch in the top lane. They gave his shield a lot extra for the trading. It's like 20 extra shield, even at early ranks. So very good trading, pretty good split push potential, and then of course he has his ult to help snowball lanes. You know, if you just get one ult in the bot lane, double kill dragon, sometimes that's enough to win the game, right? So he's just really mobile, has a lot of power around the map right now. Now, some people, I think, are going a little too offensive with him. You know, people were rushing... what I saw, like Titanic into, there's one other offensive item, but I think like Titanic's probably pretty good. I might just go like Tiamat into Sunfire and then finish the Titanic later, but either way, it's a pretty good build, solid split pushing, great with Grasp of the Undying, great in team fights. So I think he's just going to be a really good utility top laner overall. He was very strong last patch, still going to be strong this patch. Singe is another one who's kind of a sleeper. Now, he's fallen out a little bit. I'm not sure if it's because he has a bad matchup into Singed or into Shin or what, but he does very well into tanks. You aren't seeing as many tanks. That might be one thing, but split pushes really well. He's an AP threat in the top lane. There aren't a ton of those right now that are like super viable, so having that is good. And just does really high sustained damage for a lot of those fights out there, and just puts a ton of pressure on the map. He's hard to run down. So I think that overall, you know, in a meta where people aren't playing as much lockdown CC, then he is going to be pretty strong. Maokai is going to be one of the premier tanks in the top lane. I think after Ornn getting nerfed a lot, Maokai is still disrespected. Very strong champion, tons and tons of CC. So if you're lacking CC in the jungle, especially, or in the bot lane, you know, you've got a Soraka bot lane, you got a jungle Kha'Zix, something like that, Maokai can come in. He is one of the kings of team fighting. He always has been. We're in a team fight meta right now. This does a ton of CC. Pretty respectable damage for building all tank. Very good gank assist. If a jungler ever comes up there, you can lock him down for 50 years. You're going to kill him. So just a really, really strong champion overall. And then Wukong is another one who is still going to be pretty strong overall. He has been nerfed several times, but he still has the multiple knockups, really strong snowball potential with Trinity Force, lots of damage, lots of outplay potential with his clone. So I think he's going to be good. And then the Fiora is the last one, and we'll kind of see how that goes. I have an asterisk by her because she is harder to play, and she excels at a playstyle that is not meta right now, but she could be one of the champions that helps redefine the meta, especially at top level play. Maybe. I don't know. But she's extremely good at split pushing. She's an extremely good 1v1 duelist. And she can actually take towers super fast right now as well because they changed her Q to where it does damage to towers now. So I think she's definitely a sleeper if she gets really far ahead. Now, she is pretty bad at team fighting. You can see her pick rate and win rate are spiking quite a bit right now. But she is pretty bad at team fighting. She does go double offensive items with Ravenous Hydra, which was buffed maybe 5 or 6 patches ago. Trinity Force, and she has received several buffs. So, anyways, I think that she is going to be very strong. And they did lower the cooldown on her Q by quite a lot, so I think that she's strong. What is it, Rory?
I want to go with you.
Okay, you go ahead. I'll go up there in just a second, okay?
Okay. He'll be up in a second.
I'll be up in just a second, okay, Rory? We're almost done.
Mommy.
Well, just wait there. Just wait 1 second. I'm almost done. I'm just finishing up here. So anyways, I think that she can be good against tanks, against the Shen, against the Maokai, stuff like that. And if you do get split push control, then she can be good. So she's not as great at team fighting, but she is good if split pushing is something that your team can coordinate properly. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you next time.